Urgent, topical and timely. Power Breakfast with Tessa Dooms, 6 to 9 a.m.
It's 8:17, and as promised, we have with us Dr. Motsoaledi, the Minister of Health. After having delivered now, Minister, I'm sure you are breathing a sigh of relief. This national budget is now passed through. You've come to us from time to time to share some of your priorities, but anything that you want to highlight for us in terms of the first steps and next steps for the department?
Well, we've been waiting for this moment, Tessa, because because before the budgets are finalized and passed, it is difficult to start your work. Remember, we announced 4 important things that we're going to do with the extra 6.7 billion. That's apart. Remember, I announced all the new hospital buildings.
Yes.
So apart from that, Treasury gave us an extra 6.7 billion. Because over the past decade, we've been suffering austerity in the Department of Health. So to try and start a movement away from that austerity, we're giving that 6.7 billion. We had to decide what is the best thing that we can do that will have an impact in the public health care system. And we agreed that we need to hire 1,200 doctors, 200 extra nurses, and 250 other health workers. That's number one. Number two, you remember we said part of the problem that our public hospitals are experiencing is a lack of facilities, even things like, bed linen, mattresses, beds, and all that, bassinets for babies. So we're going to order them for 1.4 billion rand. We're going to buy 1.4 million articles, rather. 1.4 million articles. That will cost us 1.3 billion rand. We also said then we are going to absorb 27,000 community health workers who have been working for the government, for the state, for about 20 years continuously. And we need them in the fight against HIV and AIDS.
So,
and
Minister,
then lastly,
just before you move from that one, is this referring to those who have been EPWP workers, these people who have had these continuous EPWP contracts? Where do they come from that they've been there in the system for 20 years?
Sorry, Tessa. We don't have EPW in health. We don't use EPWP. It's not our program. We're talking about community health workers.
Community health workers, okay.
Yes, these are the people who are what we call patient-facing people. If I give you the history of them, you may remember that we went through a very bad history with HIV and AIDS. During those years of denialism where people were not getting ARVs. People were sick, they were dying, they couldn't do things for themselves. There are lots of people who stood up as volunteers to help.
Sure.
To get into families, clean them, give them food, help them in whatever way. And that program eventually evolved while they came on their own, but it evolved in what is called community health workers. Because then NGOs saw an opportunity. They went to organize them, put them together, and they are the ones who
have been paying them.
If I may use that word, sell them to the state and say, here are community health workers, I'm bringing them for you. So for a long time, they were brought by NGOs.
So this is insourcing them.
Yeah, the problem was that NGOs were paying them differently. They were not paying them minimum wage. They were paying them at different times. And they will come to the state to say, look, I'm doing the work for you, but the NGO that brought me is not paying me, etc. So the government, the department eventually decided to put them all on PESAL.
Gotcha.
All on PESAL so that they earn at the same time. But they also agreed to put them on minimum wage. So
the insourcing program here for community healthcare workers. Thanks for highlighting that one first, Minister.
But let's also be honest.
Yeah.
The unions, NEHAU specifically, went to court to complain. And of course they won the case. Just hang on, don't go. They won the case. And we agree with them that it's too long that they've been used in that way. Yes. So the court said they have to become part and parcel of the public service. That's different from EPW, completely different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for clarifying that one. Minister, your final priority?
Yeah, the final priority is over these 10 years of austerity, provincial department has been owing service providers, especially those who provide essential services like oxygen, laboratory services, blood and blood products, pharmaceuticals. So we are going to start paying those accruals. It's a lot of accruals. And this year we can only afford 3.75 billion. And then from next year it will go a little bit higher.
All right. And so, Minister, you've also, of course, in the past spoken to us about the building of new hospitals and facilities and refurbishments,
Yes.
etc. One of our listeners was just wondering, to what extent does that cover mental health facilities as well?
To what extent is what?
Does the infrastructure bill that you plan cover mental health facilities?
Yes, there is a mental hospital that is being built in Northwest. And in our plans, we have got in our plans a building of a mental hospital in Mpumalanga, because Mpumalanga is the only province in the whole country that never had a single mental hospital. So we are also planning that one.
All right. And so those are some of the big priorities there. And I think that big focus on hiring doctors, an important one, in light of what you mentioned to us last week, I think it was, Dr. Motsoaledi, where you said that some of the problems that we're seeing with overcrowding are not going to be solved in a one-shot solution. And you mentioned things like our staff deficits, and I think this is starting to address some of that. But there was another thing that you mentioned that really piqued my interest, and I've been thinking about since then, which is the question of internal migration in the country. So what are some of the burdens that is placing on how you break up and divide up the resources between provinces, particularly? Because I can imagine that a province like Gauteng might see a lot of internal migration. And so we've been having conversations about planning for these things. How are you managing those issues?
It does have internal migration. The population of Gauteng has more than doubled, if you know. And that's why if you read my budget speech carefully, most of the hospitals that we're putting up are actually in Gauteng, especially around Soweto, because that's where the growth is. We are not neglecting all the other areas, but we're saying Gauteng hospitals are extremely overcrowded because of this internal migration, whether from inside the country, from our rural areas, or from neighboring countries. It's a fact. It is happening. Yeah. And we need to start preparing for it. For instance, I gave an example that when Bheki Mlangeni Hospital in Jabulani was built, the aim was to release Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital. But that was woefully inadequate. It's very far from relieving Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital. You need 4 brand new hospitals in Soweto if you were to relieve Chris Hani Baragwanath. If you don't do that, Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital get overcrowded every day, and you people in the media don't get happy about it. You believe it's part of mismanagement. It's just huge overcrowding because of a large number of people who go there. So we are putting what we have done. We did not just thumbsuck, by the way. We've got an electronic program, a digitized program rather, called HIPS, Hospital Infrastructure Portfolio System, where you fit into that system population numbers, you fit in district health information system, you fit in whatever statistics you had about health into the system, and the system informs you where to put a new hospital in terms of those numbers you have given it. And that's how we chose those areas. You know, we need a new hospital in El Dorado Park. You need a new hospital in Dobsonville or Meadowlands. You need a new hospital. You know, we have chosen all those areas and say, this is where we're going to put the hospital. And
I was wondering, Dr. Motsoaledi, in terms of those internal migration, because there's one thing about having people permanently migrate or migrate for economic opportunities and settle. But then there's also the other challenge of if other provinces are not performing well in terms of their health care. I've heard of a number of stories of people saying that they are coming from the Eastern Cape, they're coming from somewhere else in order to get access to healthcare. And so, how do you then manage between making sure that where people are, there are adequate healthcare services so that they don't feel like they need to go elsewhere to get quality?
Yeah, well, look, let me give you an example. I get my treatment at Steve Biko Academic Hospital. every time I go there, the professor who's treating me, the head of department, tells me of the number of people who move from Mpumalanga, because Mpumalanga doesn't have an academic hospital, doesn't have a teaching hospital, doesn't have a central hospital. No, Limpopo doesn't have it, so they have to send to Gauteng, doesn't have it.
Yeah.
Only that in Limpopo we've started building it. It is at 26% completion as I'm speaking. Mpumalanga we haven't started, but in the budget speech I said we need to put it there. Northwest also doesn't have a central hospital. Northern Cape also doesn't have a central hospital. So all those hospitals will have to refer somewhere because this is where all the facilities are.
Yeah.
This is where all the knowledge is. This is where all the skill is.
No, and I think
that's why we need to go and put facilities there.
Yeah, no, I think that gives a very good background as to the spend, particularly on infrastructure, but also very grateful to see a bigger spend there on more staff. That is Dr. Motsoaledi, the Minister of Health in South Africa, just giving us an update on the plans for that now passed budget in Parliament.